Welcome to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. Our mission here is to help 1 million people start a business of their own. We believe no one is born anything, not a doctor, not a lawyer, of course not an entrepreneur. We can all be trained to be these things. There's many different types of doctors, there's many different types of lawyers, they all require different skills. So the question isn't, are you an entrepreneur, but what type of entrepreneur are you? And then what resources do you need to become the entrepreneur you want to become? My guest this week is James Uffindell, founder and CEO of Bright Network. And I think you're going to really enjoy his insights, story, and business model. James, welcome.
Thanks, Simon. Really great to be on the podcast.
Lovely if you could start off by just telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Thanks. So my name's James Uffindell. I have always been an entrepreneur, actually, which maybe I'll talk about in a bit more detail. Started my first business from my student bedroom, but had other businesses before that. And my current and at the moment kind of core mission is I'm the founder and CEO of Bright Network, which I set up in 2013, having built and kind of scaled and sold my first business. I set up Bright Network in 2013, and we are building the workforce of tomorrow. So our ambition is to help bright young people fulfill their potential in the world of work. We have about 400,000 young people, over 400,000 young people on our network. It's all free for them. So we call it the career service you never had. And on the other side, it's all paid for by about 250 top employers. So everybody from the likes of Google, Goldman Sachs, PwC, these employers fund our work to upskill, inspire, and connect the next generation.
It's really amazing what you're doing. I've been 1 year myself trying to help young people with starting businesses, and your organisation always comes up, people just really loving what you're doing. So thank you for helping people right now. I think right now more than ever, this is really quite needed. So fantastic job. I wanted to ask you.
I really appreciate the kind words.
Well, no, it's well deserved. Just looking back at your history, I think when people tune into our podcast, they want to understand how it happens. How do people become entrepreneurs? How does it happen? I look back at your career, and basically on LinkedIn, you've pretty much been an entrepreneur ever since you started, listing what you do on LinkedIn. But how did it start? Did it start family? How did it all begin?
It's a very interesting question, and one that fascinates me. Are entrepreneurs kind of made, or are they born? So I'd say I'd always been entrepreneurial. I'd always had kind of ideas about how things can maybe work better and how things can be different. And my very first business, actually, my mum sent me a photo the other day, which kind of really wowed me. It was me aged about, I don't know, probably about 8 or 9, maybe even younger. And I had a table outside the cottage we lived in, and I was selling conkers to the kids in the village, which was, I think, quite a thing, given there's a conker tree just down the road. And I also noticed on it there was a sign, and all the money from this conker venture was going to the Cornish Seal Sanctuary, which is where we used to go on holiday. And so that was a real memory. And my dad likes to remind me, as a kid, probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6, I used to ground up bricks and try and sell them as ant dust to kill the ants, because I think they might have had some ants running around or something. So I'd always been that entrepreneurial kind of character. And school, I used to sell sweets out of my locker to undercut the school canteen or tuck shop or whatever. I used to go to the cash and carry. So I think I'd always had that. Where did that come from? I don't know. I mean, growing up, mum and dad got divorced when I was young, when I was 3. There's a lot of kind of change, I'd say, in my family growing up. I'm very lucky they're both amazing parents, but fundamentally brought up by a kind of a single kind of working mum, I suppose. And both my parents kind of remarried, and I think there's a lot of probably change. I was probably used to change and uncertainty and newness, and then having to adapt to kind of different situations, kind of step siblings, step parents, etc. And I spent a lot of time with my dad, which was great. And my dad was actually a shepherd. So he, believe it or not, they both left school at 16. Mum was a secretary, dad was a shepherd. And actually, interesting, I'd kind of watch him because he's, his day job was being paid to look after other people's sheep, but then actually started to buy his own sheep. And then he basically started selling his own meat. He set this it was literally like a cupboard in the middle of nowhere, selling his own meat. And so I think watching him and then knitting it all together, and people often say, well, how do you start your own business? But I think, fundamentally, it's just about getting a product and supplying it to a customer. And if you're very focused on keeping your customer happy, then that's good. So yeah, watching him was definitely kind of helpful. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know where it comes from ultimately, but I completely agree with what you said in your opening statement about everybody has to be entrepreneurial now. Like the Reid Hoffman book, the Startup of You. Everybody now has to kind of think entrepreneurially, if not be, run their own business in terms of being, a typical entrepreneur.
And some of my best friends are entrepreneurs. They work inside companies, leveraging their entrepreneurial knowledge and skill. So it's definitely a skill set more than anything else, I think, that people can learn.
I agree more, and it's so important, and we need it now more than ever, particularly obviously with COVID-19, how we build back better, the challenge we've got around kind of climate change, automation with AI, the whole concept of a job for life now is, I think, obviously anathema. There's a brilliant book called The 100-Year Life, which kind of paints a wonderful story about, really excitingly, we're all living longer now. So the Queen used to have one person that would write a letters to people when they hit 100, and she now has, I think, 7, and we're all living a lot longer. So the idea of a 3-stage career, education, work, and then retirement, the problem now is if you retire at 60, you might be retired for longer than you actually worked. So we all need to be kind of entrepreneurial in terms of, I think, managing our careers. And those skills are essentially about, I think, managing risk, seeing opportunities, trying to do things better. I completely agree. Those skills can all be developed and learned. And also it is also a mindset thing, and that too can be worked on.
Yeah, it's also part of the opportunity right now, given how technology is kind of freeing us all from, frankly, the office. Before COVID, we were free of the office really if we wanted to be, and the opportunity and the shared economy is there. But your point about AI is also quite an important one too. I mean, technology is going to disrupt those that don't innovate, so you also have to retrain yourself in a way.
Absolutely. And that ongoing experience and learning is something we're really passionate about at Bright Network, with our 400,000 kind of young people. How we equip them for the world of work is super critical to us on our mission. And there's all sorts of funny things going on. So 25% of graduates are in jobs that don't require a graduate degree, for example. So how do we make sure they're kind of educated and equipped the right way? One thing we did when COVID hit was we could see COVID was coming. We can see work experience is so important for young people, and we could see face-to-face internships were being cancelled left, right, and centre. So very quickly we spun up. It took about 6 weeks. We spun up something called Internship Experience UK. We launched that at the beginning of May. So COVID obviously hit kind of like mid-March. I think we launched it in May, and students wanted more experience, firms still wanted to access talent, and we built a coalition over 120 partners, everybody from CBI, Tech UK, and then we delivered 1 million hours of online learning through the summer, and we had over 120,000 applications for young people, and they were basically doing 3-day virtual internship experiences. But what was wonderful to see in our team, I mean, we're a small team, we're 45 people at Bright Network, was at the start of the year, there were no plans to do this. And it became the biggest thing we did in the year. And to watch the team kind of do all the business as usual stuff they were doing, but also do this, it was remarkable. And one of our 3 values is growth mindset. So it was incredible to see them spin that up.
It's fascinating. And I want to interview your dad and ask, he was looking after someone else's sheep, and then he took the plunge and started his own. And why would he reply? Why did he do that?
It's a great question. Why would he do that? I think, why did he do that? I should ask him, actually.
Yeah, let's ask him. Let's do that as an add-on later. I'd love to know what changed,
What made, I'm going to ask him, actually.
Because he went from a steady salary, he went from that kind of safe structure, took some of the money he was making. I'm sure it wasn't loads of money, and bought some sheep. That's all a bit of a risk, isn't it? Interesting.
Yeah, well, he'd always been quite kind of like entrepreneurial mind. Actually, I remember one of his first ventures, because obviously, in the dark, I mean, this was obviously back in the 70s and 80s, the dark and the rain and the wind, and he would be like up on doing the lambing, right? And he invented this kind of heater box, which was about keeping the lambs warm as the lambs were born, to try and kind of help them. And I think that whole idea of kind of shepherding and helping and supporting, there's definitely something in there in terms of now kind of thinking of how I think about the Bright Network members and like curating and helping their careers all the way through. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know why he decided to take that risk and where these ideas come from. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Also, just a shout out for your mother. I think anyone who's a single parent bringing up a child, wow. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and I've got help, and my wife and myself, and we are all very tired. So
I really appreciate that, Sheila. Love to hear that. And she, right. I mean, it's interesting with parents, isn't it? Kind of what you learn, and yeah, I was very, very lucky with both my parents. But my mum, she's an amazing woman. She has phenomenal tenacity and resilience. And while she was kind of a secretary in a local company, and then actually she got promoted to a kind of a sales manager. But kind of that idea, like going, working, single mum, and a 3-year-old kid. But she has just phenomenal tenacity. And I as I self-reflect, I guess, as we all do our own careers, obviously, being entrepreneurial, there are multiple setbacks, like all the time. Like one of my favorite quotes is that Japanese saying, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8 times. I guess if you just refuse to give up. And I love endurance sports, like things like kind of marathons and triathlons and that kind of, I've definitely, I'm a very bad athlete, by the way. I'm not athletically gifted, sadly, but the things I do like doing, like cycling up kind of massive mountains, that kind of stuff, whilst I'm often at the back, I do like that kind of challenge point and that tenacity point. So referencing your point on parents, I think, my mum has absolutely kind of phenomenal levels of tenacity. And I think, going back to your core topic around entrepreneurship, I think you can pick up things from everybody and learn from everybody around you. Yeah.
And I often say to people, if your parents aren't inspiring, you find someone that is. But I think that, there's a book called Bringing Up Boys, which I think is really good, but it talks about probably, I think, what's caused you to be what you're doing. Very purpose-driven person comes from, actually, father, it comes from the mother. I mean, for the son, it comes from the mother. So that's why, my wife actually works as well. And I think it's really important for my son to see that, especially if we're trying to break cultural biases as well. Like that my wife works and we co-parent. It's not just my wife's responsibility to look after my son, and my son will grow up realizing we're equal. And it really starts at that young age. And it sounds like that naturally happened to you, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe in that as well, around, you can learn, absolutely. So you can learn from everybody, and finding other mentors. And one of the things that brought me into Bright Network was, it's my first organization from my student bedroom. That was about helping get students into universities, because I was very lucky. I went to a good university. I went to Oxford, but my school didn't send lots of people to Oxford and Cambridge. And when I got there, I realized that there was a challenge in terms of basically kind of kids from certain backgrounds not applying to university, or not applying to those kind of top universities. So so absolutely, there was no problem. Was that, so this is 1999 on your Oxford applications business? So but was that because people didn't believe that they could get in, so didn't apply? Was that the problem? That was the big that was the big kind of thing I noticed. And so I basically went to Oxford. As I said, my school didn't send many people to Oxford and Cambridge. When I got there, I realized that, hats off to them, there are some schools that were sending literally 100 kids a year to Oxford and Cambridge. And they had two things. They were believing in those students and encouraging them to apply. And then secondly, when they were applying, they were equipping them with essentially, I would call it a bit of an advantage in terms of how they approach the application system. And I thought, so basically in the summer of my second year, I worked in a pub, and then I went interrailing, where I'm not sure if you've done it, but I'd highly recommend it to anybody. I think it's under the age 26. You can buy a ticket and just basically jump on a train. So I went off with a mate, and this idea came to me that what I should do is like try and spread the knowledge around. So that was my first venture, which I started in my bedroom at a university, and then I built that up and sold that to private equity in 2013.
So, there's so many things I want to unpack from this. I think it's really important my audience don't miss a really crucial point you're making here, which is, my view, it's important to fail, but to try. So applying to Oxford, high chance you'll get rejected. But if you don't try, right, I think there's such an important lesson there that it sounds like, why did your school, who doesn't normally put so many people forward, put you forward? Was it a pressure from your family side, or was it just they spotted the talent in you, or luck?
So it's power of it comes here, I think, down slightly to the power of the individual. So yes, basically I got lucky because an incredible teacher arrived when I moved into sixth form, and he was an Oxford graduate, and he basically encouraged me to apply. I wouldn't have applied, definitely would not have applied without him. If I had applied, I definitely wouldn't have got in. So that teacher, absolutely. And I've never thought about that before. I've never thought about, it's a really interesting thing to reflect on, because, and also, like, my life hopefully would have been fine if I'd gone to any university. And I'm a big believer in just constantly making the best of those circumstances. But I completely agree with your point around risk of failure, and what I was saying earlier about, I think, being an entrepreneur is about managing risk. And I've just finished, I think it's called Invent and Wander, which is Jeff Bezos's most recent book. And he gives a brilliant example of the Fire phone. So Amazon had a go at making a mobile phone, which I think this was like kind of 10 or even 15 years ago. Complete failure, didn't work. They burnt loads of cash, but out of it came Alexa and Echo, in terms of the similar type of the type of technology around voice and search, etc. So, and Bezos's whole book is all about the importance of risk, and failure is a wonderful teacher. You don't really learn much from winning. You just learn you did the right thing, but actually you only do learn from your failures, because then you think about how you iterate and you improve and you develop for next time. So yeah, and I could talk to you for 5 hours, let alone 1 hour, about all my many failures in life and all the things that have gone wrong. But I do think that is the only way you can grow and develop.
The butterfly effect.
Not the only way. There's other ways as well, but I think it's the key way.
No, I know what you mean. It's a fascinating butterfly effect to watch how people's lives unfold, actually really anchored around this point, which is taking that chance, trying things, willing to fail. And I think this application point you're making, you look what you're doing today. I would argue you'd be doing something else perhaps, but you wouldn't be doing what you are doing today if that process hadn't played out like that. If that teacher hadn't come into your life, influenced you, supported you, believed in you. And then my instinct is you really worked hard on the application and you put a lot of effort into making sure that, your chances of success were high.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with the point. I think that talent is everywhere, or opportunity isn't. And if you think about the human race, if you go all the way back to all the millennia, we were fundamentally all just running around in caves and hunting mammoths. And we've progressed to the state we're in. We obviously have multiple challenges which we need to address as a race at the moment, as a in terms of global societies. But it just shows that ability that talent, if supported the right way, can do great things, and we're all ultimately standing on the shoulders of giants. And then how you point that talent in the right direction, unleash it. And one of the things, absolutely to your point there, that really galvanized our mission at Bright Network is taking these really super bright kids. So it's the next, we've got them, they're at university. So currently we're just focused on graduates or undergraduates. We may expand that, but currently it's just focused on undergraduates. And that actually came about, which I can go on to later, is because of my own experience of these students I'd helped apply to university coming back to me being like, how do I now connect with the world of work? And I thought, surely it's not as bad as when I was at university. But the most satisfying thing at Bright Network is taking these members, so they're members, it's all free, and then getting them their first job. And the reason that the organizations we work with, and we're so lucky with all the incredible global businesses that we work with, is they genuinely want to find the best talent, because talent is the number one thing that CEOs think about when it comes to their businesses. and our technology. So we've got about 70 million kind of data points on our network of 400,000. The way I think about it is the tap on the shoulder. So if you're lucky enough to be born into a professional kind of, I call it like a professional services family, or a kind of a well-connected, wealthy family, you're constantly getting the tap on the shoulder. So when I was at university, I remember there's a guy, one of my kind of contemporaries, and he ran off in the second year to go and do a vacation scheme. And I was like 19. I was like, what the hell is a vacation scheme? I've got no idea what it is. And he was doing it because his sister had done one. It's for those not know, it's basically an internship for lawyers, right? So it's just a phrase. It's an internship to be a lawyer. So if you want to be a lawyer, mostly you will need to do a vacation scheme, not all the time. But I had no idea what this was, and he then became a lawyer, right? You know, big city job, high earning, because he had that inside kind of track. So what we do with our network is try and replicate that and say, look, if you come from a low income background, kind of wherever you come from, but you know, you've got X, Y, Z, we can then help employers give you that tap on the shoulder using what we know about you. And the great thing now is our members, they trust us more and more. So our NPS score is actually, I think it's about 75 currently. It's actually higher than Airbnb, Apple, etc. In terms of our trust point, because we treat each one of our members as part of a really kind of, we treat them really, really well. But because of the 70 million data points, we can say, for example, we're just introducing psychometric testing, but we can say, look, you are X, Y, and Z, firm X wants X, Y, and Z, you should go and do this. And it's so unleashing that potential and seeing them get their roles is brilliant. And also it's great for us as a business, because word of mouth marketing is, as we know, it's free and people trust it. And we think about our members as kind of our key partners. And if they love the products and services all for free, then they're more likely to tell other people.
It's very interesting. There's another nugget here I don't want my audience to miss, which is in my view around the access you have to opportunities. And I think a lot of people, I have quite a big following on TikTok, and a lot of people when I talk on TikTok will complain, the rich get richer. Right, so you're connected to. You're kind of talking about it here a little bit. You're in the right network. So. But I think the opportunity with a platform like yours, and I think what's happening now with the decentralization of everything, actually, there is an opportunity for you to go and be a part of any network you want if you can have some clear idea of what it is that you want, right? So if you can get the tools and education to figure out what you want, and you can get that from YouTube, frankly. You can get inspired by an individual, but then you need to place yourself in the right networks, again, get the same access that perhaps I would say 20, 30 years ago people that were going to Oxford got. But now it's decentralized, right? The opportunity's out there.
I completely agree. And it's quite interesting watching this in terms of what we do around kind of basically for graduates into first jobs. I think initially when it was probably 10 years ago, kind of the conversations properly really started around diversity, inclusion, social mobility. I think a lot of the big corporates were probably a bit kind of worried. They didn't, the reality is a lot of them were stuffed with, kind of white middle-class males. They were in slightly panic mode. There was a slight sense of like, we need to do something because we need to do something. Whereas now, and this is the exciting thing around, I think, convergence of everything from kind of neuroscience, psychology, education, all the data shows that, obviously, if you want to succeed in business, have a great business, you need the best people, because businesses don't actually exist. They're just collections of people, right? They are an amalgamation of talent. And if you want that, then you need to access that best talent. So how you go about doing it. So to your point, absolutely, if you've got those qualities and you're kind of, you're hungry, you're driven, you want to succeed, et cetera, then I think there's a plethora of opportunities out there for you. So yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I think there's a ton of opportunity out there.
No, it's fascinating. I just wanted to go back and look at your history again, because I think people can get a lot of learnings from your process. So I can see, 1999 to 2013, you build Oxford applications, you sell it that's amazing. I mean, it's not an overnight success because there's 14 years worth of work there. But I noticed that
last year I was still at uni, so I was doing my somehow doing fine. I mean, Oxford has this crazy system where you don't really have any coursework, and you just have these, they're called finals. It's like these 2 weeks ridiculous exams. But I was I was basically doing the research. Essentially, what I was doing was I was studying success. So I was trying to work out why people had got in. I was getting people to do questionnaires, understanding why people had got in, to package it all up, and then did it. So the last year was kind of like the foundation laying, and then I started the business. But it was technically 14 years.
Yeah, I feel like asking you what's the key, and I'm sure you're going to say apply. The key is, if you don't apply, you definitely won't get in, right?
You've got to be in the race to get in if that is your ambition. And just to be clear, yes, I went to Oxford, but it's not for everybody. I think there's a lot of pros and cons, but absolutely, if it's something one aspires to, then I think absolutely kind of apply in the first place. And I think actually, interestingly, coming back to the point you're making there about kind of failure. I mean, we've got a big problem in society at the moment of kind of all these kind of glittering A stars and these exam factories, and essentially, all these kind of really these places that seem to be producing very unhappy children who are kind of ticking all the grades on getting all the grades, but maybe kind of aren't where in terms of maybe aren't in an ideal space. But I think coming back to the point around the big thing that Oxford and Cambridge look for is kind of curiosity in mind, being okay with ideas you don't understand. So the whole interview process, in my opinion, is having, been supported people for 13 years through it. And we had a network of about 3,000 graduates who would then do a lot of the mentoring and support for our members. And we were doing thousands and thousands of mock interviews, and we had, a whole range of experts. But the biggest thing is, when you get thrown a new concept in your interview, how do you respond? And are you okay with new ideas? Which obviously is very relevant to kind of the idea of failing in entrepreneurship, but it's the process and how you go about it. It's not thinking there's some perfect answer. And we'd see these kids who, would be, 10 A stars, the most kind of acting right, but they'd been essentially so prepped through the machine that when they were presented with a new concept, new idea, they just, because they didn't know the answer, they'd freak out.
It's just dawned on me, this teacher that believed in you and put you forward, you've kind of taken that teacher encouragement support model and scaled it. That's kind of what you did. And I want to.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what we've done. And the idea, and I'm pretty sure there's some research on this. I don't know for sure, but in terms of young or anybody fulfilling their potential, the idea of having somebody believe in you, I'm pretty sure it may have been proven. If it hasn't, this is me just kind of espousing. But I think having somebody believe in you is a huge factor in one's success. So you think about, they talk about the elites, like the David Camerons or whatever, and they talk about entitlement culture. But if you've always had somebody believe in you and tell you that you can do it, then you kind of just think, well, obviously I can do this. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with Bright Network. We're trying to take what those kids are lucky enough to get if they get born in certain backgrounds, and they go to top private schools and they have villas and all that kind of stuff, and they have that wonderful kind of upbringing, which nobody I think can begrudge them that. But it's but taking that and then putting that into Bright Network through digital scale. So what we can do, because obviously that's very hard to do with a person element. So we're 45 people in the business, but we support a network of 400,000. With technology and digital communications, you can then personalize. And that's where we get so much growth, because we know so much about our members, then because we trust them and, we support them, we're ethical, and we're doing the right thing, we're constantly got their back. So yeah, it's a really nice observation. Thank you. Because I kind of thought about it a bit subconsciously, but I think you're right. I think that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's I guess so important, people that affect your lives in this way and give you this insight. And I think you maybe think that Nike need to update their saying. They're basically saying just do it, but I think they should say you can do it.
Absolutely. And I love it. And that kind of believing in aspiration, ambition, you can go further. And one of the things I'm really thinking about a lot at the moment and occupies a lot of my mind is that idea of success and kind of what success looks like. And I know I was definitely there in my 20s. I think, I was obviously what's that phrase? Kind of a young man in a hurry, and I was, working when I was God sends, et cetera, and I wanted to, be successful. But I think, and there's probably definitely a financial part of that, and that's what was quite satisfying, to start a business, build it, and sell it. And that has been something I'd always wanted to do for various reasons. I think just it was an interesting process. I think the financial security element. I think if you get to a point where you've got really hopefully good financial security, then you almost constantly then reinforces the idea you're doing things because you want to do them, not because you have to do them. But then obviously then as you develop, you then think actually, and you learn more about life. Well, they've proven it, right? Like money and success are kind of inversely related. I think it's like you get to a certain income level. I think it's 70,000, which obviously is not an insignificant amount of money. But after that, there's no correlation. And one of my favorite graphs is that graph of wealth in basically, a growing wealth in the Western world, combined with increasing, decreasing levels of mental satisfaction, which actually is really, really depressing if you think about it. So yeah,
it's a fascinating point. And I saw the study too that shows it's very hard. I think I know a lot of my listeners, frankly, find it hard some weeks to pay the bills. And so, when you're at that level, there's no conversation around how, money's not important. But, I just talk personally for a second. I made a lot of money, and in a way, it actually took away my hunger for a while. I left school at 15, left home at 15. I was homeless. It made me fight. It made me come back and have hunger. And then when I actually chased and got the money, something changed. There was no longer an excuse to work that hard. And so
interesting. So not to turn around, but I wanted a question for you then, just quickly. Did you so I completely understand, like the hours may have shifted, but then did that make you work on things that arguably have bigger scale because you could think a bit more longer term and more strategically about the things you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with your early story when you're talking about like beating the tuck shop and the bricks grounded up and those ideas, because I didn't really have that. I had quite a simple upbringing, I used to play football. If I could stay out late playing football, I was rubbish at football, but just playing it was fun with your friends, right? But I didn't have that. I didn't have that purpose. I didn't have that. The word purpose never crept into my mind, probably until my first big success in business, where I started then thinking, oh, hold on a minute, this isn't just about making money. But I think you had it much younger. I feel like you had it much younger. You kind of, even with your first business, you're very purpose-driven concept, helping people. I was always about like arbitrage, which is basically, making money, like making a living.
It's interesting, and I think that almost the points kind of converge, because don't get me wrong, like I think knew the corporate world wasn't for me for various reasons. I think I really admire what people do there, but I just knew it wasn't the right kind of fit for me. But it was very much, when I started my first business, it was very much a business. But I guess that subconsciously there was a mission element. There was a kind of if we can help schools, the business model, we would go to schools and schools would pay us. And it was great. Like I was 21 and I'd just be like driving around the country in my little car, like going to places I'd never been to before, like kind of Skipton and Halifax and Clitheroe. I'd just turn up there with my, like in my suit and my kind of PowerPoint or whatever on how to get into university. But so it was a business model, and then these schools would pay us because they wanted to kind of help their students. But yes, it was a business, but it was almost built into, I guess it comes back to that kind of whole reason about why, like if you can improve people and if you go back, and help and deliver something, I guess people want, then you should be rewarded for that.
Totally agree. And so I know you do private investing. You're an angel investor. What makes you invest in someone? What's the criteria for you to?
Yeah, it's really well. So when I sold the first business application in 2013, I decided I wanted to do angel investing for I guess kind of two main reasons. One, there was actually the primary reason was actually to switch it, having been an entrepreneur and still being an entrepreneur who as a business owner and somebody runs it, to put myself in the investment seat. So to actually have the investment experience. And I think that's mainly a better business or better CEO, because we've raised about 8 million on Bright Network in terms of investment. And I think I can relate more to what investors are thinking about. And the other element was to share what I'd learned in terms of starting, building, and selling a business. To answer your question, and I guess now kind of a bit further down the journey, I can't remember exactly. I've done like 6 or 7 of them, and actually still waiting for the outcomes on some of them. It's quite interesting, like the whole story that angel investing always takes longer than it should do. But I think the answer to your question, and I think. And I'm obviously not kind of a great entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form, but I think the things I look for when investing I think it does come down to the individual. So it is basically the hunger, the determination, the grit, the resilience, how they think, how their mind works. And actually, I'm not sure. Have you read the book Sapiens?
Nope. I know it's great.
It is mind blowing. So as I've always been interested, I guess, like the social sciences. I did like economics and philosophy and politics at uni. And I can't believe it's actually an ex-girlfriend recommended this book, and I'm so glad and thankful to her that she did, because I wish I read it 10 years ago. It was understanding what it means to be human. So the book is called The Story of Humankind. I mean, also the story of I think it's Sapiens, the story of humans, basically. But the only thing that differentiates all humans, essentially, we've all got, we all look pretty similar. It is the brain. And cognitive ability. We've got this thing that no one can see, this kind of gray matter. And if you think about what separates like an Oprah Winfrey or an Obama or a Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates from everybody else, and it's that kind of organ, like what is going on, and how quickly is that brain moving, and how does it think, and how does it work? Because if you get that right, then pretty much everything flows from that, because that brain will assess opportunities the right way, hire the right people, make the right impact on clients. So that's what I've learned. However, so person, market size, really, really important. How big a market is, in terms of just, quite frankly, how much money is in that market. I think that's the kind of second thing. And then thirdly, I think looking for some kind of product market fit. Like, entrepreneurs have an idea, there's a market. Is there a fit there? Have they got it working? I think those would probably be the 3 things. But I'm probably, I'd say I'm up overall. Probably I need to check the sheets, but actually the biggest thing I've definitely learned, it was a bit like doing a mini MBA for me. Like I'd never had any formal business training, and actually just having experience of seeing these businesses and just like what's going on with them, because all businesses I think are essentially the same. Like they have so much more in common. They can look so different, but fundamentally there is so much, obviously around kind of people, strategy, finance, and you just learn so much, I think, watching businesses that way.
I really like your take on angel investing as well, about getting an understanding on the other side of the table, how the world works. I think it does make you a better CEO. It makes you...
Have you done some angel investing, Son?
Yeah, I have. I've invested in 69 startups. I just invested in one yesterday. But I've invested in lots of different ways. I invested direct, of course. I invested via funds like AngelList. I've worked with other people on investments. It's quite an experience. And for me, I still don't consider myself a prolific investor. I see myself as a business person who likes to help other business folks. But I learn a lot by investing in people.
And what's the average of what the top 3 things you've learned, or what have you learned on your angel investing?
To get your own podcast show. You should.
I just always love learning.
Yeah.
Maybe one for later.
Yeah, no, but it is a fascinating thing. But ultimately, I completely concur with you, and I want my listeners to pick up on this, because a lot of our listeners are looking to raise money, and so a lot of the time, I probably get 10 people a day asking for money. And I think the key is, a big part of it is your authenticity, your energy, and the idea almost comes second to most people. I know it sounds crazy. Most people lead with the idea, but we are, you've said it. I think everybody who's putting money into things at the angel level for sure is doing it based on people, because often the idea itself isn't even working yet 9 times out of 10. So and you're going to have to pivot. So you're relying on that person to pivot. You're relying on that person to have moral code that's in line with yours, and so on.
I couldn't agree more. And similarly, you get lots of approaches, and I think it's ironic in a way, because I think one of my early mistakes was being undercapitalized. And it's just one. I can't tell you now, and we are in such a lucky position. I'm touching the wood on this table under here, to have capital. And actually, I think it's a big thing in the UK versus obviously the US, like not having enough capital behind you. But then adversely, I think people can get very obsessed about raising money when they've just got an idea. And actually, what can help is just cracking on and getting it started and focusing on the products. And you can always, I think, you can always hustle some cash together, I think, in some way, shape or form or another. But, that whole, people often want to raise money before they start, and the whole like imperfect action beats perfect inaction rule. As you know, right? Like, you getting started is just in some way, shape or form, is rather than obsessing about like, how do I go and raise 5 million, then all your time is spent around raising the money, not actually on the product market fit and solving the need of the of whatever need you want to solve as an entrepreneur.
Well, I forgot to say it earlier. I want to say, anybody that's listening that has been touched by your support, both all the way back to Oxford applications to today's Bright Network, I want to hear from them. I want to hear from them in the comments. I'd like to interview them. I'd love to see the butterfly effect. I'd actually like to interview your teacher that originally gave you this inspiration.
I told you his name. I don't want to bust his.
Well, no, I was going to say. I mean, if he's listening, I think he should send you an invoice. Like for success today.
I'll send the link to him.
Yeah. He was the original muse for this, so he deserves a big check, I think. But anyway, I do love looking at the history of it. And you mentioned there, selling your business. And I know, sometimes I've sold my business too. I sold my business Fluid to PwC. It's a fascinating story beyond just the headline. Is there any learnings you had from selling your business? Was there any insights to the audience that might be worth sharing?
Learnings on selling. Well, where to start? So it was great. Because it was very clear for me. I'd always wanted to start, build, and then sell. So people talk about kind of like, it's your baby and you're emotionally connected, etc. But it was, for me, like, it was very clear, and I knew why I wanted to do it in terms of the reasons I kind of referenced earlier. And it was a lovely feeling, like, when that money, as obviously you had as well, right? And that money arrives into your bank account, it's like, you have this kind of sense of achievement, but also this sense of kind of like lightness, and it's kind of very empowering. And I think there's multiple reasons that people might buy your business. I think there's lots, and the key is, does it fit with the strategy of what an acquirer what they want to do. And actually, the reason we got bought, like, I've never been able to predict the reason that we got bought by who we got bought, and it was a great deal. And actually, it's been really nice to then build. I think it's important to build a premium business that goes on to succeed, because on the one hand, you can be a bit like, sold it too cheaply or whatever, and that first business has gone on to kind of continue to grow and develop. But actually, that's really great, because yes, it's worth more than I expect it's worth more than when I sold it. But that's great in terms of building a reputation for building kind of premium assets. And I think there's a load of stuff around using advisors. I think they're kind of often underrated, but getting a good advisor who can help you, essentially a broker, obviously, who can help you getting good advice.
Did you get a broker, or did they approach you?
So I did, actually. Yeah, I did. But and it's a very we could probably talk for an hour about that topic alone, right? But for me, that was useful. And then the process took about, I think it was about 9 months in the end, which was fine. But it was very similar to raising money, I think, in terms of like, you get everything ready, you go out to market, you then do the deal. It's those 3-stage processes, which probably each take about 2-3 months. But for me, it was a really good experience. So and I'm really glad that business is still doing well.
There's a lot of warring factions, I guess, within the entrepreneurial community about building a business to sell it. You can catch me on camera often selling, don't build a business to sell it. But I think there is an important nuance to what you're talking about here, and I really like this point, and I don't want the audience to miss it either, which is sometimes you sell a business and it goes on to do better things without you. And as you said quite rightly, and I also love it, which is, a deal is about both parties winning. And so when I sold my company Fluid to PwC, about a year afterwards, the head of PwC said to me, "Simon, the business is doing so well. Don't you wish you'd held on to it? You could have got double." And I was like, I am so happy that it's working. I am so happy that it was an acquisition that had substance, and it wasn't, bullshit. It was something that actually was useful to your organization. I was very happy with what I got.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And also the great thing is if you've got a concept and you're passionate about a vision, actually having new people come in with new ideas and also, quite frankly, investment capital who can then elevate it to the next level. It's like really nice. And also for the team as well, like the team seem to have a good experience. So yeah, but I guess getting the right buyer, I think is really important.
Yep. Well, when PwC bought my business, everyone got a pay rise. So straight off the bat, they looked after their people.
Happy days.
Yeah, totally. And then I felt bad that I was underpaying everyone for too long. But
I'm sure
we had a table tennis table, so we made up for it somehow. But yeah, it's really interesting. Now, just touching on raising money. Now, the last thing I read, you raised £8 million for your business. What was that process like?
So I think it was staged is how I describe it. So I funded the business originally, the Bright Network, with some of the capital I got from my first sale. Then it was angels. So classic kind of, friends and family contacts, etc., etc. Actually, there weren't any family. I don't know why I'm saying that, but like,
model is family and friends. It's a model more than actually family.
Yeah. So it's kind of, people who they have money, and they were putting in kind of checks of 10, 20, 50k, etc. And then we moved into institutional, which obviously is a whole different ball game. But has been working really well for us. And we're very, very lucky. We're backed by a venture capital firm called Maven, and they are absolutely fantastic. And it was very flattering actually, because the first time, having never done institutional, so the first time we went out to institution, we got 4 offers within 2 weeks, which was really kind of just blew my mind. It was like these people, rather than people going to people's houses asking them to put money into your business, you're going to like these big kind of flashy offices in London, and we got 4 offers within 2 weeks. And they've been incredibly supportive of the business, and I couldn't kind of sing their praises kind of highly enough. So, again,
it's actually nice to hear. So I was going to say, it's really nice to hear, because so often, frankly, I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of founders, and often there's a horror story around the investors and what they did. So, shout out for Maven. It's really, really, really nice to hear that there's actually, they're unfairly treated, a lot of these organizations. They're cast with the same brush, 1 or 2 bad players. And so it's actually nice to hear.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'd really stress is that there's lots of different types of investors. I think you've kind of always called out there, and I think going for investors that are kind of long term and aren't just trying to kind of because the reason they're doing, obviously, all investors obviously they want to make money. I mean, that is obviously a primary driver, and there's lots of things obviously around other factors in terms of impact, but sometimes it can take time to get a return. And I think long-term investors are great like that. And again, not to talk too much about Amazon, but if you look at Amazon, I think they launched at like $100 a share or something. They then had the dot-com bust, went to $6 a share, and I think it's now about $3,500 per share.
Crazy.
So if you think about that long-term thinking, what Warren Buffett is obviously really big about that as well, that kind of proper long-term thinking. So I think personally, I think it can take time to get things right, and a patient investor would always be the type of investor I think I probably want to be aligned with.
You say just on this subject alone, we could probably do an hour chat, because I find that there is a problem with the structure on people's funds. They're in 4 years vested, 4 years out. So in other words, they need to make money within 4 to 8 years. They have to have money back, which puts pressure on the business and the founder. But Jeff Bezos smashed that cycle a bit, and he told investors he wasn't giving them their money back, right? He was the flywheel model. Which has got compound. You get compound, and I think smart investors are waking up to that. But there's still some old models based on the fund structure that causes a lot of founders stress, where they feel under pressure to spend money and scale beyond what's actually necessary to make it a sustainable long-term business.
Absolutely, and yeah, look at Buffett, right? He's done an average of 19% year on year, and I was very lucky. About 3 years ago, got to go to the Berkshire Hathaway AGM, which is incredible. I really recommend it if anybody gets to go.
I've seen it on YouTube. Unbelievable. I think he has the most amazing time. I always wanted my AGMs for my companies to be like how he does it.
I do recommend going, actually. So one of my mates was a shareholder. So he was like, let's all go. So 3 of us went, and it was amazing, because you're there with like, and also there's always like crazy Trump voters. It's like, 40,000 or whatever, 50,000 all packed into this essentially stadium. But also you can apparently, because it's amazing, these shareholders, they also put their tickets online for like $20. So basically anybody can go. But that whole long-term mindset, like I think it was like 62 or whatever when he started his fund, and it was like, I think it was like $40 a share or something, and it's now 300,000. And it's 19% or whatever it is year on year. It's compound is such an exciting thing.
Totally, yeah. Well, I think when you're combining what you're doing, compound investment with compound help for people, back to that butterfly effect, right? You're actually infecting people's lives at a very early age and helping them hopefully have this incredible journey and compounding their success based on those early support structures.
Well, I really, really appreciate that. And I think, and it is, and from a business angle, entrepreneur angle, like it is lovely in the mission part of it. But the great thing is, in terms of like hopefully doing business and doing good, is these brilliant young people who we get at 18, invest in, help and support them. Quite frankly, their careers become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And they are, they are absolutely amazing. So just feel very, very lucky to stay in touch with them. And then obviously, and the great thing is then, because we do those long-term bets, they then become clients. So, students who've helped 18, 19, then, 5, 6 years later, they'll be kind of, in organizations, they'll turn their organization into a client. They'll come back and give back to the undergraduate community. So they'll kind of come back and say, look, this is how I did it, whatever. So yeah, so we see that network is essentially our asset. But it just obviously, it's a long-term investment thesis.
Clearly Bright Network's doing amazing things and doing really well. Do you think there was a lucky moment with the business? Was there any one particular thing that really stands out for you?
It's a great question. I think I'd say there's been three main moments. I think when we started, and I think all startups go through this, we were too broad in our strategy. We're trying to help everybody from an 18-year-old to a 28-year-old. And this very smart guy, actually, it's actually our CTO. When he joined the business, he was like, "We're too unfocused. We need to focus." So then we zoned in on basically 18 to 21-year-olds, because helping, an 18-year-old, student is very different to maybe helping a 28-year-old in their career. So we could be really precise on that. The second was definitely the institutional fundraise. In retrospect, before we were undercapitalized in terms of what we wanted to do and the scale we wanted to do, I think that would be the second one. And the third one was only a year ago when we went to COVID by being contrarian. So when COVID kicked off, obviously a lot of our competitors were kind of, making extensive use of basically it was a very kind of difficult market, right? Because if you're in essentially, we're a technology business, but if you're in recruitment and our revenue actually fell for the first few months, our revenue kind of just fell by about 50% kind of week on week. We're monitoring it, and we went from growing 50% week on week to we had fell. But then we wanted to invest in our community. So we took a contrarian decision. We invested about £200,000 to £300,000 in Internship Experience UK. And what then that has allowed us to do is now we, hopefully, fingers crossed, bounce back better. It's really just moved us, just quite frankly, to the front of the pack. In terms of scale, I mean, we had 120,000 applications for this internship experience. We built this coalition. We have people from all over the world doing it. It's just move. And we were able to show everybody what a digital business we are. Because the danger is people kind of think, recruitment consultancy and it's a few people and with CVs or whatever, move that old school model, whereas to have a proper it was almost able to show everybody our digital scale. So I think those are the three main points I'd say.
Fascinating. You are helping me prove a thesis I have about luck in your story, and so I think there is an element of, you want to be more lucky, you have to take more risk. The more risk you take, the luckier you get.
I love it.
And so, but there's luck is broken into two things. 2% of life is an unpredictable luck. So for example, where you're born, nothing you can do about that. Can't influence it. Doesn't matter how hard you work. That's where you're going to be born. And then, COVID is another good example. You just highlighted, we no one wanted it. It happens to us all, which actually is quite uniting in its own way, unlike Brexit, which divides us. I think somehow COVID in a way brings us together. But how you then react to that luck, good or bad, is the 98% of life. And what you did by going in and putting a lot of money into this new program, £300,000, a lot of money, putting something into that to help people at that moment, big gamble, and it's paid off. But people went often the other way, and they wonder why they don't have as much luck.
Thanks. I really appreciate it, and absolutely, it was a contrarian move at the time, and yes, we have kind of benefited from it hugely. And actually, and that's where again come back to the point around investors. Like, I mean, what amazing investor! A lot of investors be like, no, batten down the hatches.
Yeah, right then, that moment, because that's the moment everyone's like, keep cash is king. I think that's what I heard that a million times during that first week of lockdown. So to go the other way is both brilliant and kind of, I think, sums up your career really, going in the opposite direction to everybody else.
Thank you. Well, the team did an amazing job. It was genuinely astounding to watch what they did, and I'm just very, very lucky to work with them every day.
We're very conscious of time. I actually want to quickly ask you about team. Any quick thoughts on your first hire, for example? What's the learning?
Wow, my first hire was I just started my business, and I realized there was a scheme. Basically, didn't really have any money, and there's a scheme where you could go to the local job centre, and you could get somebody on long-term employment benefit and give them an opportunity at kind of a vastly subsidised, if not kind of completely free rate. I can't remember the exact deal. I remember being so nervous interviewing her. I was like 21 and clueless, and I think she was in her 40s, but she was amazing. And she came into the office, and it was like, and we're in this kind of crazy, basically my living room of my first house when I was 21, and I mean, she was incredible, and she was great. I guess other things I'd say on team, I would say, I mean, it's a cliche, but I'd say to anybody running a business, obsess about the quality of talent you have in your business. I think I've probably wasted about £1 million in my career on wages of people that now, if I went back and just took that out, it would basically be £1 million net saving. Not their fault when things haven't gone right. And now, touch wood, through experience, we've got an amazing kind of head of people in the business. And but yeah, over the years, just I think two things, like hiring the wrong people, just for whatever reason, and not putting enough rigor and around that. And then secondly, once the wrong people are if they're in the business, then essentially being quite lazy about it, quite frankly. It's hard building a business, the energy around everything from, products, clients, team, technology, finance. You've got to have so many pots on the boil, and you see somebody, they're not right, and it's probably not the right thing for them.
They also feel it 9 times out of 10 as well.
Sorry?
They also feel it, right? So it's kind of a two-way being polite to each other for quite a long time by accident sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, and you're not doing anybody favors, because there's it's not right for them in terms of their job. It's not right for your business. Again, not to obsess about Amazon, but I love what they do in terms of, they offer people money to quit. They say basically if you quit, we'll give you $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is. It's genius, because it's just
it'd be interesting to do that for just people you think that are actually enjoying it, just to see what happens. Yeah. I say to my crew now here, I'll give you £5,000 team each if you just quit and never call me again. Are you up for it?
Yeah. But also, I think it's a very kind of confident strategy. But yes, I think those would be my main observations on team. I mean, I think there's been research by Google that say something like the best, manual tasks, say like chopping wood or whatever, the best performer can only be 2 times better than the worst performer. But with software development or thought jobs, it can be 10x. So never underestimate when you get an incredible person in what they can do. And that's kind of how I sought to build the business. So my strategy really is if you get the best people, they will look after your business. And very, very lucky with the team we have.
Oh, I totally agree. I think Connor, who does all the editing, has something to say on my offer. Connor?
Yeah, just saying, I don't think I'd take the money because, these podcasts take about 8 hours to edit. So if it's just Simon, it'll probably double that. So it'll be about 16 hours per episode.
Excellent.
Good. Maybe I just need to up the amount then. Is that what we're talking about? Awesome. Well, look, I've absolutely loved having you on the podcast, James. I honestly think we've got a whole series we could do together here on all the different subjects that we've covered. We could go deep on someone. I'd love to do that with you, actually. I think it's really, really interesting, your insights and knowledge. So thank you for that.
I really enjoy the whole experience. I think what you're getting up to with you and your team, it is absolutely fantastic and really needed. I mean, the idea that you've obviously been so successful in business and then you are kind of giving back in such scale, because actually the businesses, people starting business, they are the growth engines we need. I was lucky enough to do there's a program called Goldman Sachs 10,000, which I'd highly recommend for kind of startup businesses. It's an amazing program by Goldman's. And I think it was on there they mentioned that 20% of all new jobs are created by just 1% of businesses that are growing at more than 20% a year. So the idea that you're supporting all these businesses is just absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I would love to continue the conversation at some point.
Definitely. Well, I'm a big fan of yours and I hope we can team up as well. I just want to end the podcast with one question. If you went back to that younger you and gave some advice, what would it be?
Think big.
Nice one.
Because I think the reality is, if you're running a business, whatever business it is, if it's a corner shop, whatever business it is, you're going to be working really hard. You're going to have all the stress. You're going to have all the strain. If you're doing all that, work on something really big, and therefore don't underestimate the impact you can have, the scale you can have, and that's what I'm really loving about kind of Bright Network now is that it's a global problem. How young people connect with the world of work really is a global problem. So think big.
Love it. There's a saying who I should credit to someone else, but I can't remember, so I'm going to steal it, which is you've got to think, why not think big?
I love it. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic.
So I'm going to quickly sum up a few things just for my takeaway. I like to do this. I love this concept that you can do it. Surround yourself with people that will believe in you, even if it's one person that believes in you. What a difference you can make in your life. Of course, if you can believe in yourself, that's the best. But I think we all need a bit of support and encouragement. That's why we're here at the Purposeful Project and the Good Luck Club. We're here to do that. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. You can beat the tuck shops. I like this, sometimes I remember being at school, my biggest aspiration maybe was to work in the tuck shop. But I love the idea that, sometimes you see these big companies like Amazon, you can beat them. You can be your own version of it, whether it's based on price or whether it's based on quality, whether it's based on your personality. You can beat the tuck shops. I like that. There's opportunity all around. There's still bricks out there that need grounding up, then turned into whatever to make the world a better place. Like that. I think the whole concept of buying and selling conkers, it reminds me, a lot of my listeners are out of Asia and in America, maybe they don't know what you mean about conkers, but I think, as a kid growing up, I had a conker that lasted 17 tries. So if anyone in England will know what I mean, that was a champion conker right there.
That's very good. Strong conker.
Yeah, the closest I got to someone offered to buy it from me for 50p, and I was tempted because I wanted some sweets. But I do love the idea that find your conkers and be bonkers kind of idea. Brilliant. And I also like the point you made about the Queen. She's now got 7 people writing to people that are now getting over 100, just to illustrate that we are living longer. You can have more than one career in your life. You can work for someone else. You can work for yourself. You can go back working for someone else. We've got a lot of time. But I really think personally, of course, that's why I have an entrepreneurial show. Working for yourself will make people want to hire you. Having that experience and that innovative way and that self-drive and learning all of those things will actually make you even more desirable from an employer's perspective. Experience is key in life. And it's important to fail. I know we hear it a lot on Instagram. We see it, and it's just a quote thrown out there. But I think the insights from James today, his story. If you don't pick up the points here, that he's failed many times and tried to do many things, and that's why he's successful. If he hadn't had those failures, he wouldn't be successful. So the more failures you have, the more chance of success. Is what I take away. If you are looking after someone else's sheep right now, if you're enjoying it, sit back, look up at the sky. Sounds awesome. But remember as well, just like James's dad, you can buy a sheep of your own if you want. You can try it out. You can add it to the flock. You can work with the company itself to add that sheep, or you can do your own. And so, and who knows where it could end up. You could end up being the inventor of a wonderful box that keeps little baby sheep warm and be known and have a legacy, which I really love that kind of insight into James's father's life. I want to say it again because I think it's important. I know a lot of our listeners are single mums who want to start a business, and they've got like I have, a 3-year-old to look after, and it's not easy. And single mothers should also be on the Queen's list of letters every year. I'd love to lobby that. I think single mothers deserve a lot of love and support, and I just want to shout out and say, any single mothers out there listening to this broadcast today, if you need anything to start your business, you reach out to us. We will find time to help you. And so, but what an incredible human being you are for looking after your child and making that your priority. And so, yeah, that's a wrap from us today, folks. I do think the final point James made around focus in your business is really interesting. Don't go too broad, but have a big ambition and a big dream. We have the same here. I'm going to take some of James's advice there. Sometimes we're too broad trying to help everybody, but it is important to have a plan. I think that's what James has highlighted today with his experience and his knowledge. And so, James, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure. Seriously enjoyed it, and just keep up the fantastic work. Thanks, Son.
Likewise. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. If you got any value from James's insights today, do me a favor, hit the links below and give him a like on his social media. It really will cost you nothing. In fact, anybody out there who's starting a business that you admire or like, don't just scroll past them, give them a like on their social media. It costs you nothing to do that. There are so many things you can do to support those people that will cost you nothing and will mean the world to them. Go one step further, make a comment. Another step further, share their business and what they're doing, support them. Because right now, if we don't support those people, the very backbone of every economy will fall apart. We need to help those people. So again, I want to thank you for listening. We know you have 824,000 podcasts you could be listening to, and you take the time out to listen to ours, and we feel incredibly lucky.